Happy Pride, sweet peas. This month has been super busy, so we're actually just gonna hop right into things. And that's starting with a me made wardrobe. So, the weather this month has been truly all over the place. There have been days where it has been so sweltering, like on the day where I was sewing a bra in advance of Pride Parade, that I did not want to wear clothes. The closest that you will find me on the hot days of summer wearing clothes is some sort of loose pant or skirt, and then a sports bra, and that's usually my go-to. And the sports bra is mostly just so that I can like run outside to go deal with Willow, if I need to in a pinch, without needing to worry about throwing an extra layer of clothing on. But I do really love the Sophie Hines Access tank, and I definitely need to sew more of those. Other than that, I haven't really delved into the world of like proper sports bras or I guess knitted and fitted crop tops. Normally, when I am sewing under-esque garments, whether I'm choosing to wear over layers on them or not, I'm sewing lingerie, which is what I am doing here. And so, if you are in the Creative Coven community, then you already know that the Sanctuary Hub has a whole section on how to sew your own undies, which for me usually means lacy lingerie because that is my personal preference and my go to. And I really love extra strappy stuff because, contrary to popular belief, it's actually a lot more comfortable most of the time because you have a lot more options for adjusting fit. So I really like to add an extra strappy back. And so it looks fancy, but it also means that I have a comfier fit. And the elastic and this, especially with the rings and sliders, gives me a little bit more leeway for adjusting fit as the elastic starts to wear out. I think one thing that I've kind of noticed as a result of sewing my own lingerie rather than buying it is how it feels like in no time all of a sudden elastics are wearing out, and that's not actually true. It's just that I am much more invested in their longevity than I used to be when I would buy things. The other reason that I really like sewing lingerie, other than that it's lovely, is that it is still the one thing I find that you can sew, and it will cost you significantly less than if you were to purchase a similar quality product in the store. So at least as far as materials, but honestly, even time, like I've sewn probably 20 underwire bras at this point, and they don't always fit me exactly the way that I want them to, but it still ends up being that like I have the equivalent of, a very like fancy bra, like higher quality than Victoria's Secret, and I have treated myself better than those corporations are treating their employees. And supplies wise, it costs very little because you're generally using not very much material. And even if you're going really fancy with the extra sliders and rings and things like that, it still doesn't add up to very much as far as supplies go. The other really nice thing is that you can, if something doesn't work the way that you want, or you have like worn out the elastic on something, you can always just save those rings and finders and wires and things like that and just move them to another project. So it's pretty easy to upcycle when you're sewing lingerie. So anyway, I have a tendency of sewing matching sets of lingerie rather than just like plugging holes in my undies wardrobe, when I have an excuse, which is kind of the way that I do most of my making for my wardrobe, if we're being completely honest. And so I decided that I was going to use the Pride Parade as an excuse to sew lingerie. Not because anybody was going to see it, but because I like having fresh undies on for myself. So I sewed myself another Black Beauty bra, which is what I am working on here. It's by Emerald Erin, and it's one of my personal favorites. I've made it a bajillion times. And it's something that at this point I'm relatively comfortable making adjustments to. So I had bought a little while ago about 10 yards of this stretch fabric from Madeline, which is another sewing shop for lingerie supplies. And the photo, it's sort of like, I don't know if you guys remember that image a while ago that was of a dress, and it was like, is it black and white or blue and white or black and gold, I think. And it was just like the way that your eyes would see a thing um, would then result in seeing it as one thing or very much something else. So I, by looking at the photos online, assumed I was getting like a kind of ivory with gold metallic galloon lace, stretch galloon lace. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is perfect. It's exactly what I want for this scheme that I have for an upcoming project. And then it arrived, and it was very much, as you can see as I'm holding it here, my skin tone. So it's very much a beige, and it's actually a silver metallic, which was also not what I was going for the particular project that I had in my head. However, it's still super pretty, and I can still actually make all the projects that I had in my brain, and it'll be kind of a good test experiment ahead of time to make sure that things are fitting the way that I want and all of that. And then eventually I'll find the fabric that I have in my head for these other projects. And or maybe I'll change my mind and move on to something else. But you can see here, I've got this pretty great um, uh, computerized sewing machine that I bought secondhand from Winnipeg Sews, who had also bought it secondhand. So it has gone through at least 3 different owners. We don't know who owned it before, or I don't know at least. It's a Janome, it's an old Janome, and it works really well and has been a very good workhorse, especially while I've been doing a lot of the lingerie sewing. I got away with a really crappy Shark machine and sewed like multiple pairs of pants and jeans on it even, and then eventually it did kick the bucket, and the thing it was kicking the bucket on was lingerie. And that's just because you're using more specialized fabrics that are, you go from like ultra delicate stretch lace that you need to be sewing with tissue paper underneath to like multiple layers of strap, and needing to have very fine and precise stitches. So here I am just attaching the strappy back on this. And in real time, unlike in TikTok time, it takes a while to get things lined up and be making even those small stitches. But this was kind of coming up the home stretch on this particular project. And other things that I've been doing as far as my Me Made wardrobe this month has been actually finding patterns that I am dreaming of someday having time to sew and not having time at all to do them right now. And then also tossing some of those items that I found last month that I shared, putting them into some dye pots. So I've dyed the pants that I'd purchased. One went into a spruce pot, or no, a sumac pot, and the other one went into a marigold pot. And so I had these fabulously bright yellow, cheery marigold pants that I wore at Pride. And it was probably the most colorful I have ever been for Pride, but it felt necessary this year because there's a lot of bullshit happening this year. So flying those flags a little bit more intentionally than I normally do. This is what happens once you become an old grizzled queer who's like, I did the rainbows. Can't I take a break from them? Although I do dream of someday having like a really fabulous, naturally dyed rainbow outfit that doesn't feel like a clown outfit. I think that's always kind of my trick when it comes to dealing with rainbowy things. So yeah, so I had those bright yellow pants, and then I had a marigold and iron top, and then I sewed this really cute matching pair of undies. The undies are the Marie undies, and the bra worked out pretty well. So yeah. one thing that I did notice is that I'm actually going to need to make an adjustment to the strapping because the height of the band, the side band, really prefers three straps, not two, to make sure that that middle portion is hugging. So I'm probably going to tweak this for a better fit. Um, but otherwise, I'm pretty happy with it, and it's cute and delicate and glittery. So I ended up knitting actually a decent amount this month, considering how much has been going on. I'm working on a sweater that will be released in collaboration with Hinterland Yarns this September for Knit City. And so I'm just working up the sample now, but I finally got past the color work yoke and I'm now on the stockinette body. So it's going a lot faster. Eventually, there is going to be some steeking involved. I'm pretty excited about it, and I think it's going to be really, really pretty and stunning. And I'm hoping that once I have it ready, the weather plays nicely with me so that I don't end up boiling when we do the photo shoot. So we'll see how that goes. This month, I have been dealing with my kiddos again with teaching, but I did finally get around to finishing off last year's dye journals. So these are colors that got added to my color journal in the Creative Coven community. You can actually find the plant monographs as well as dye recipes for all of these different plants. And then I ended up pulling together an actual dye recipe book that I then printed off and have been delivering to each of the schools that I've been working with. I'm currently working on developing a K to 12 natural dyeing curriculum. And so, yeah, just so that schools have access to resources like this so that teachers can kind of play with it and kids can play with stuff like this. So I'm pretty excited. The kids are also going to have a PDF copy that they can have access to so that they can keep playing at home if they want. I've spent so much time in front of my computer this month. It's been a little bit wild. I've also been running around like a chicken with my head cut off a little bit. But it's not the worst thing in the world. It is a little bit exhausting. But this month there are a whole bunch of deadlines that as they are kind of getting like I'm finishing them, I'm passing them, it's clearing up a lot of space on my to-do list so that I will have time and hopefully some energy to actually start tackling the other projects that I have also had starting to clutter up my brain. But I got to file my taxes. I have been looking into and applying for different grants. I went and contacted Canada Council again to update my artist profile. And hopefully, we'll be submitting grants for them relatively soon, although the deadline is October, and then you find out in February of 2024. So, whenever you're working on projects, especially when it comes to arts funding bodies, you have to back things up quite significantly. It's not that frequent or not as common that, especially if it's like a really big grant with a more involved application process, that you are going to be able to like apply and then quickly turn around and have the money really soon. Meanwhile, I applied for a very large grant that is a small business grant, and I should be hearing in a few weeks. So, it's just part of the game. But yeah, we'll see how all of that kind of goes. The other things that have been happening this month, as far as staring at my computer so much, is I've been finishing up at the schools that I've been teaching at this past spring with the Artists in Schools program. And as that has been winding down, and as I have been getting their final resources compiled and sent to them, I also now have to be shifting into writing up their final reports. And so once those reports are submitted, the final dollars that are withheld will be sent, assuming everything looks good for the reports. So yeah, there's always that, bit of administrative paperwork that needs to go in. So that's on my to-do list as we're kind of like getting to those final stages. And then also Sanctuary is officially going to print, which, I guess I didn't mention that. We did hit our base funding goal to go to print. We didn't actually hit the goal itself, but we made enough money to be able to go to print. So we are going to print at the end of this month for Sanctuary, which is very exciting. And so the test knitting has just wrapped up as we are dealing now with our New Moon Love Note. And so patterns have been getting their tester notes applied and then being sent over to my tech editor so that she can do a final review now that we have the tester's notes. Then once she gets me the files back, then I get to put them into the full book draft. Then we're going to be looking at the book draft itself and making sure that it is all good. And so by the end of the month, aka within the next like 10 days, we should be officially heading to print for Sanctuary and should have the books by early August. And the official release date is going to be September 1st, barring any major issues that are currently unforeseen. So yeah, I'm excited to get this new book baby into everybody's hands. It's going to be really, really nice. And also it's going to be nice to just kind of finally be able to clear it out of my brain after it's been sitting there for so many years, and be able to start moving forward on other creative projects that are starting to kind of pop up and demand more attention. It'll be nice to be able to say that, yes, Sanctuary has received the attention it deserves and it's going to be beautiful. And also now we can shift ourselves to other projects. The 5-year Biziversary is coming up on July 1st. And so because this month has been so busy, I don't totally know what is going to happen for that. Other than that, there might be some things that end up in the shop. There is a 20% off sale happening this month for Pride site-wide. So you can go stock up and support your favorite little queer biz witch. And then eventually I'm going to be doing a website overhaul, which I'm actually really excited about. And I'm trying to accept the fact that it will probably take several months to do, but I'll kind of keep you up to date on that. I have been painting flowers for myself plants every day. I paint a different plant, and it's just for my own joy. And also, a bunch of my plant babies have a new shelf home, which is really nice. I've got plants happening inside and outside, and also at my parents' house. I have a whack of plant babies this year, and it's really, really exciting to have so many. Okay, so while it has been so very busy, the one thing that I have been able to do for the teeny tiny coven is I'm actually working on like a diorama kind of sub box, I guess. I don't know formally what the word is, which goes to show how much I know about the world of miniatures. But I'm making this like, yeah, I guess diorama is the closest thing that I can think of. Using an Amazon box, and it's gonna be like a little mini exhibition installation sample of the larger plant installation that I am working on. And so what I have been doing here was actually making paper using packing material like the brown paper that comes in some of my supply boxes as like a kind of cushioning material. And so I take it and I make it into new paper, and I have added homegrown dye plants into into the mix after the slurry is made. And here I am just making a whole bunch of little pieces of paper. I only have a small mold and decal at the moment. And honestly, it kind of works better to be a small mold and decal. I think if I had a large one, at this point at least, it would get a little bit complicated. Also, honestly, I did not do the best job of mixing and blending this particular batch. So there were like some pretty large chunks when I was doing um, the like straining of the slurry. But once the paper dried, it worked out beautifully. And so there are sunflower petals and indigo leaves, dried indigo leaves, and marigold petals. And I think I put something else in there. Maybe I had some cosmos. No, it was Dyer's chamomile. And I just used a few little petals from that. And so I just sprinkled those into the slurry, into the wet mixture. And so as I'm pressing each piece of paper, then they're drying into the paper. And so it's the exact same process for making seed paper. You would just put seeds instead of flower petals. And that's how you get that like printable paper. The other thing that I experimented with when I was teaching out in Brandon was actually using leftover dye pots and seeing how that would impact the paper if I used it instead of water when I was making the paper slurries, and it made colored paper. So I'm really excited, honestly, because I have some schemes for this year's dye pots for local color harvests, and making some paper with them and then doing some things with that paper. But you can see here I like had some big chunks that I was having to pull off. So I'm going to have to do a better job of blending, aka maybe actually like buy a better blender than the thing that I got to be doing my blending for it. But it's fun. It's not that difficult. It's like a really easy exercise that you can be doing with kids. And my plan, as far as this paper, which is why it relates to the teeny tiny coven, even though it might seem like it doesn't, is that these pieces of paper are going to go onto the diorama box. And so the box will be fully covered with this paper, creating kind of like an almost like a book cover. And so yeah, I mean, part of it is just the practicality of like covering up the box's branding and stuff, and the ugliness of it, but it's also to kind of add some extra textural elements and some interest to the outside of the box, because the focus is really going to be on the interior, but I want the whole thing to be beautiful um, and engaging and textural. So, and also, of course, be relevant to the fact that it's focusing on highlighting local dyes and what we can do with those local dyes. So, my plan for the diorama is basically to create it as like a mini version of the much larger installation that I plan on working on, and then be able to kind of take it around and share it. And have there be something visual for folks to see while I'm working on the much larger thing, because my experience is that people do better when they have something in front of their eyeballs that give them a good idea of what it is that is being explained to them, especially if either there's like a potential collaboration in play, or talking to potential funders, things like that. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, and hopefully, maybe I'll have some time this month to actually work on some of the other parts of the teeny tiny coven. But I feel like I'm just gonna end up playing catch up on a bajillion other things once I get sanctuary and the grant reports off of my to-do list. So we shall see. But it's been fun, and I am looking forward to making this little diorama and then filling it with cute little things. I already have some stuff kind of prepped and planned for it. So we'll see how it goes as far as making the whole thing. I'll share it with you as I go through that process, of course. So thanks you all for paying attention. This month is obviously a slightly shorter month than usual, and that is just because things are so busy around these parts that I did not have time to just like sit in front of my camera for you this month. Honestly, also a lot of that has to do with just time for laundry. But that's okay. So as a reminder, the 20% off Pride sale is going on site wide through the end of June. You can use code Pride is a Riot, all capital letters, at checkout for whatever it is that you want to pick up from the online store. That includes classes as well. And I will be having some sort of little shop update in July to celebrate the Biziversary. If nothing else, there will be pre-orders for Sanctuary that pop up in the shop for July. And otherwise, of course, join the newsletter. That's your best spot to stay up to date with things as they are happening and as they are coming up. And if you are not already subscribed here to YouTube, please do. Social media is a really exhausting beast for small biz owners these days, myself included. And I don't know what to do, if I'm being completely honest. Instagram feels like a semi-useless slog, slash maybe it's only important to use for personal use these days based on the reach that things seem to get. And I'm a little baby here on YouTube, but I do have fun here on YouTube. So feel free to subscribe here. You can also subscribe to Pinterest. And honestly, the newsletter is going to always be the best spot to stay up to date with things. So thank you all for tuning in, and I'll chat with you soon. Happy Pride, sweet peas.